So this is something I've wanted to do for quite a while. Sometimes when I have a day off, I'll revisit some films I've seen recently, especially if it was something I liked. Especially if I liked the first half an hour. I'm the sort of person who finds that they enjoy the build up of films a lot more than I enjoy finales in general. So if a finale of a film is fantastic, it leaves a huge impression on me because usually I think that they're the weaker end of the films that I tend to watch, especially like among the masses that I tend to watch at the cinema. I think they generally the build up is where the writers' room are hitting their gold, going mad, and it's the finales they kind of have to work out later on. And I thought Saw X was a huge example of this. The build up was something that was just kind of marvelling, and it really sold the Saw franchise to me. This is going to contain some spoilers, but to set the scene, John Kramer in this, it's between a couple of the Saw films, but the idea is we're supposed to know who he is. We're supposed to know the magnitude of this kind of man, like how evilly he is, basically. But in the first half an hour of the film, all that we get is that he's a very ill old man. There's reddening around his eyes. He is really struggling with cancer, and he is getting treatment. He's also a very mild-mannered man. He's someone who's polite to the people around him. He sort of says his pleases and thank yous, and he goes the extra mile when he's thanking someone. You know, he puts effort into it and all that kind of. So he's become like a really relatable character. If you'd never seen a Saw film in your life, you'd be kind of confused at how this film goes, because the first half an hour is just him as like a victim of an illness. And this is painted further by like the use of the music. It's all kind of sort of poignant but almost chirpy at the same time. It's all soft colours, the colour palette, everything's like kind of soft focus, everything looks a bit dreamlike. And in a weird way, so people who know who he is, he almost seems more menacing in this light, because we know what he's capable of. He almost seems like a scarier person. The way he says stuff, the tone of voice he uses stuff is how we are used to hearing him on tapes talking about how people are going to really hurt themselves. But you're hearing him say, thank you, and nice to meet you in that voice. And it's really quite unnerving. And as I said, the music is just like full of hope at this point. It's like, oh, we're going to find you some treatment for your cancer. It's like, oh, here's an avenue you've got. Here's an injection of hope into the plot. There's a point in the film where they reveal the surgical room that he's going to be put under anaesthetic, and the music changes in the same way that you would if a rocket ship appears. You know, it's all sci-fi, like da 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 da, like something. It wasn't that. That's embarrassing, but at the same time, it was like that sort of thing. And what I really like about this, people say foreshadowing is a big art in film, but it's constantly kind of misquoted or misdefined. I feel like good foreshadowing is when you do not pick up on anything or very few things at the start, and they only provide value for a rewatch. They're things you pick up once you know, not things you pick up once you don't know, because really that's just pushing a narrative, and it's ruining mystery. It's diluting the shock that you get when it happens. So I'm not a big fan of strong foreshadowing, and this is what they're doing. Is everyone looks you in the so basically what happens is these doctors who are supposed to be helping him, they are scammers. They are in there to get his money and then relocate. But there is no foreshadowing in that sense. Everyone looks him in the eye. There's actually a feeling, because what they did in the trailer is that they misdirected you a little bit. They acted like it was genuine doctors who found out who he was. And then they stopped giving him treatment. So there was a bit of misdirection there, because in actuality, they are just scammers. They aren't doctors at all. So you're sitting there listening to these conversations between John Kramer and the doctors, and it's like, oh, so what do you do? And you're thinking, oh God, he's got to try and make it so he doesn't find out that he's evil. That's where your head is during these conversations. So you're thinking, oh, is he going to give himself away? Is that why they refuse him the treatment? Because we already know this from the trailer. But in reality, he is the victim of a scam, and it is so interesting. And obviously, the big turning point is him finding out that it's a scam. And there is the smallest bit of foreshadowing is when the music is dropped completely. The hopeful music is gone. And suddenly you have silence. Suddenly you have a slightly more washed out colour palette, more like a colder blue. And there is less of a shaky cam as well. Or actually, it starts to creep in the shaky cam, because that's to show something's going wrong. There's other ways they do that as well. When things are starting to go wrong, you think you're just sensing it as a viewer, but no, it's very cleverly devised by the filmmakers. It'll be like quick cuts and stuff. That's how they generally do it. It will be quick cuts in an otherwise fine situation that make you think, oh, hang on a sec, what's going on here? But what they did, they washed out the colour, they dropped the music. That was how you knew something was wrong. And he slowly realised the place that he'd had the surgery has been abandoned. And he goes into the room where he had the surgery, and he finds out that the video of the surgery that he watched was a little practice tape. It was a very clever but simple scam. And when he realised he'd been scammed, the shakiness goes from the camera. It is completely still, because he knows exactly what his recourse is here. He knows that he is in control of the situation, and he is going to make these people pay. And that's a very clever moment. Obviously, the music is amazing. It goes up like a crescendo, a bit like in the first Saw movie, when the mystery starts to reveal itself. The music just builds and builds and builds, and then it goes up a jump when certain dialogue is said. All very, very carefully done things, this. And it was just fantastic. The red around his eye, I noticed this the second time I watched it. The red around his eyes actually goes during the scene. I don't know when it happened exactly, but it isn't there anymore. And he's still very much a sufferer of cancer at this point. But the red around his eyes does go. And I feel like that is to make us see him more as a violent man than a victim. So yeah, I think it was around about that point where I was like, this is going to be one of the best horror films I've seen. And I won't talk about the stuff afterwards, because I don't think that's the stuff that I wanted to point towards, because after that, it's revenge, it's saw traps, it's not the sort of stuff I'm interested in as much. The tempered, more careful, more filmmaking approach is kind of ditched, and it just turns into the classic sort of torture stuff, which is just, it's not as clever, I don't think. There was a little detail in the traps that they did early on in the film, one that he imagined and one that actually happened before he started making these scammers pay. One of them was one where he could quite easily escape, and I think that's where the traps are at their best, is when they will definitely escape, because your life is more important than a bit of flesh on your arms, for instance. These traps were definitely the better one. They're definitely the stronger ones, because you know something clicks in your head when you see them set up in that trap. Oh, they're definitely going to do it, but this is going to suck to watch. That's the best Saw traps. The ones where it's like, I don't know if they're going to be able to do this. There's a little bit less tension there, because you know there's a very strong chance they're going to die, so the shock is kind of not there. But yes, I just wanted to talk about why I think this Saw film is getting, the Saw X, this one, is getting a really, really good reception by critics, because it really draws out the build-up before the first trap. And that's how you make a really good legacy sequel, is that you make the audience wait for what they've arrived at the theatre for. You make them wait for it. There was something that I saw Mark Mode talk about with Past Lives recently, and it was like, the way that you really entertain an audience, so you make them wait a second or two later than they're yearning for the music to come in. So like an emotional moment, you just make them wait a second or two longer than you expect it to kick in, and that's how you really play with people. But yeah, that's the end of my TED talk. That's why Saw, I think, is doing so well at the moment.